All right, there we go. And that recording will be posted on the district website so that anyone who can or couldn't attend, or if you'd like to review it, you can certainly go on to the district website or the curriculum tab to do so. Okay. My name is Vera Radu. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the district supervisor of curriculum instruction and assessment, and I supervise gifted programming in the district. The Rumson School District over multiple years has worked really hard to bring the programming up levels since Dr. Borman and I have been here probably about 8 or 9 years. Through the study of intelligence and giftedness, we've come to really understand the definition of giftedness through the lens of the research from Dr. Carol Dweck, Dr. Renzulli, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, and Dr. Bertie Kingor, who actually provided training to our staff several years ago and actually presented a parent academy several years ago to talk about how giftedness shows itself and how it develops. And, you know, their research supports growing student thinking through intentional teaching and creating experiences that allow our children to move from that fixed mindset where they kind of view their intelligence as set, like I'm not good at math, I'll never be good at math, more towards a growth mindset where their intelligence is fostered and developed through providing motivational activities, opportunities, and environmental supports. Our district has done a tremendous amount of work on developing growth mindset in our students, and some of you who have students in upper grades may have heard some of the presentations that we delivered early on about growth mindset. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask you to please put in the chat, let us know what grade level your child is currently in so that we can kind of tailor the preceding slides to meet your needs. So if everyone could go to the chat box. Right. All right, we're seeing a wide variety. All right, great. So it'll be more of a broader overview, but we've hoped to answer those frequently asked questions in our presentation. Thank you for using the chat. So let's talk a little bit about the definition of a gifted student. And the New Jersey Department of Education allows for districts to determine their own metrics based on their local district norms. And it allows us to take a look at this definition and determine what numbers will be those cut scores so that we can identify those students who fit this definition. I think a lens that we definitely need to look through is that JET programming, similar to students in special education, is based on need. It's not a reward. And I think that is a really important distinction. The chart that we have listed on this slide actually came from Dr. Bertie Kingor. Again, she presented earlier, several years ago, to our district. And the comparisons between a high achieving versus a gifted student might be helpful to you in answering questions about why, if your student is achieving all A's in their schoolwork, why are they not being considered for gifted programming? And I think that this chart does a really phenomenal job at identifying what are some of those behaviors that differentiate a high achieving student from that gifted student. So reflecting back on what I said in the previous slides about growing students' abilities and moving them from a fixed mindset to that growth mindset, providing them with the right motivation and opportunities in those early developmental years to kind of instigate some of those behaviors that would be indicative of a student who requires gifted programming. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. LaCourchick to talk a little bit about the program at Dean Porter. Before I do, Mrs. Lakorchik, are there any questions in the chat?
No questions, just all different grade levels coming up.
Great. All right, so take it away, Mrs. Lakorchik.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Lakorchik. I am the JET teacher for K through 3 over at Dean Porter. I just want to start with a little bit about myself. This is my 25th year of teaching. 18 of those years have been spent here at Dean Porter. I taught 3rd grade, I taught 2nd grade, and then last year was the first year that I was the JET K through 3 teacher. So when I do go into the students' classrooms, I am using a program called PETS. It's Primary Education Thinking Skills. I push into every kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade class once in a 6-day cycle during WIN periods, and I use this PETS program. And with this PETS program, it really just promotes critical thinking, higher level thinking skills. What I love about it is that it provides the opportunity for all students to experience the challenges of these new thinking skills. Since I'm doing a whole class, everyone gets the opportunity to experience these thinking skills. I did put a link, once this is posted on our website, there is a link on this particular slide just to the gifted and talented standards that the PETS program addresses. So with the PETS program, there are PETS characters. And when we meet the PETS characters, in the beginning of every unit, a character introduces a higher level thinking skill that's used in their job to solve problems. So each character serves as a guide through a story to introduce the type of thinking, and the activities then reinforce that type of thinking. So for example, we have a character like Dudley the detective. So Dudley the detective does detective thinking, but what does that mean? That means that there's only one right answer, and students have to follow clues to figure out what that one right answer is. But then we have another character like Isabel the inventor. Isabel the inventor does inventor thinking. And with that, there are lots and lots and lots of acceptable answers. We're looking at things in new and different ways. I'll say wild and crazy ideas are acceptable. Then we have characters like Sybil the scientist. We're doing some scientific thinking where we're sorting things and we're grouping things in different categories. So as you can see on this web, there are different characters that go along with the different types of thinking. And what's great about this is that I introduce these characters, and then students come in, let's say 1st grade, and they've already heard these characters. We move to 2nd grade. I'm still using those characters. We're just doing some activities that maybe are a little bit more challenging and appropriate for that grade level. So this just shows the different types of thinking there. The next one. So here are some examples here. This is just kindergarten, for example. I use a lot of literature. So I'll read stories to the students, and then we'll do activities to go along with the stories. So for example, 10 black dots is on here. I'll read the story, and then students were given dots, and they could create whatever they wanted from those dots. Or not a box. Well, if it's not a box, what are you going to use it for instead? We've played games in kindergarten like Heads Up, where you put the card on top of your head, and the student has to give 3 clues so we can guess to see what picture is that you're holding on top of your head. So lots of different activities where the students can interact together too, using these different types of skills. My next slide in 1st grade, this just shows you I no longer really have the books to go along with it, but everything comes along with a story. So this particular example is a story on Isabel the inventor. What is inventor thinking? So we talk a lot about, students put on their brain focals and they're looking at something in a new and different way. So these examples show they're looking at bubbles. What do they see instead of those bubbles? Or they had to invent something that would take the acorns from the ground and bring them all the way up into Isabel's tree. So again, this one was just inventor thinking, but doing these different types of activities. There are links on each of these slides also just to the units that I do and the standards that they address as well. And then my 2nd grade slide, this is looking at, again, inventor thinking in this one, taking something and rotating it, and how does it look different to you? My favorite, if you can see it on the screen, is there's a dog in a cone head. That was my favorite one. And there's also some sorting on here for scientific thinking. We're making a hypothesis. We're testing our hypothesis. We're sorting by different groups in different categories on this as well. And then for my 3rd grade slide, Third grade, I see once in a 6-day cycle, I push in whole class, but only for the first trimester. And you'll hear a little bit later on in our presentation, in the second trimester is when our third graders get identified. So then I will no longer push into those and do whole class lessons for third grade. So just in the first trimester. But here you can see I'm still using those characters, but now I'm trying to change my terminology a little bit. Instead of deductive thinking, I might say we're using deductive logic or convergent thinking, and just using a little bit more of the vocabulary. And here some examples are, we do logic elimination grids, we play lots of different games. Aces, Jumbles, Zilch is a lot like Wordle. They had to make a chain reaction contraption where they had to create something using different things to crush acorns for Isabel the Inventor. Or the last example on here is a 4-color theorem where you had to color this map. You could only use 4 colors and the same color could never touch each other. So, with all of these, what's great is that we're starting in kindergarten and I continue to build each year. Students come in already knowing the characters and the different types of thinking. And then our activities get just a little bit more challenging and appropriate for that grade level.
Mrs. Lakorchik, could
Yes.
I ask you to kind of talk a little bit about, as the students are working through these units and these projects, you're able to take a look at where students are in terms of their development, in terms of developing these types of thinking. Can you talk a little bit about how you collect that data?
Yes. So, as I go into every classroom, I have different record sheets and rubrics that I use and checklists, and I get to just keep almost like a portfolio of student work to see how they're doing and how they're progressing. And what's really great about that is that, let's say last year I started this in kindergarten, I can continue to track every student all the way through third grade.
And I think it's important also, Mrs. Lakorchik, for parents to know that you are in there with the classroom teacher. So the classroom teacher is hearing the language and reinforcing the different types of thinking. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, just that, the classroom teacher is there and they are able to reinforce that type of thinking. So it's always great to hear from the classroom teacher at a point when I'm not in there, to hear that students continue to do this type of thinking with them as well.
And lastly, Mrs. Lakorchik, could you talk a little bit about how you assist teachers with providing some activities to kind of further enrich students in the classroom?
Sure. So I am also just constantly in communication with all of the teachers here at Dean Porter. If they're noticing that they have a student that needs maybe something a little bit more challenging, and then they're talking with me, I'm finding different activities. I'm always there to support the teachers, to give them ideas to help students in the classroom.
Great. I'm going to look in the chat to see if there are any questions for your section. And it does not look like there are any questions. So with that, thank you, Mrs. Lakorchik. We're going to move on in the presentation. The next slide deals with our COGAT assessment. I know that there are a handful of parents, second grade parents here, whose students just took the COGAT assessment and received the scores. I do want you to know that there is a Screencastify recorded presentation that I gave that is linked on this slide for your for you to access, where I go in depth into that report and all the particular scores on that sheet that you've received. So I want to direct you to that rather than spending that time now on it. There is a presentation available for you, linked and on the district curriculum website. A reminder, though, for all of us is that the COGAT score is not an IQ score. In order to obtain an IQ score, you need, one-on-one testing with a psychologist or someone who is trained in administering those assessments. This is a screen, and it's really used to measure those critical thinking and reasoning skills that students use in areas of academics that develop over time. And much like what Mrs. Lakorchik was talking about, how we're trying to develop those critical thinking and creative thinking skills in our K-3 students, this kind of measures how students have internalized those processes throughout all of their schooling, pre-K to where they are in second grade. So, third grade arrives, and how do we assess our students to determine if they are in need of gifted programming. In selecting appropriate methods of assessment used in all of the identification processes in the district, we based all of our rubrics on best practice as outlined from the National Association of Gifted Children. And we do focus our identification K through 8, and it's aligned with the NAGC position paper entitled The Role of Assessment in Identification of Gifted Students. I know that was a mouthful, but I wanted you to know that these numbers are based on best practice. And feel free to take a look at that white paper if you're interested. It's actually pretty interesting. Okay, so on this slide, hyperlinked for you are all of the JET rubrics and parent worksheets. The parent worksheets are a simplified look at the rubric where you as parent can download it, print it, and start to fill in your child's data to see where they are. So we have our ELA and math rubrics at the top, and we also have rubrics for some other content areas that fall outside of those two that I just noted, available for viewing as well. All right, let's take a look and go through some examples. So on our rubric, you will notice we have phase 1 where a student qualifies automatically because their district data supports that they're in need of gifted programming. And then we have a phase 2, which is our appeal process that is built into the rubric. Phase 2 are for students, who don't demonstrate that immediate need, but they've gained enough quality points that we need to do some more digging. We need to take a look to see did we miss something, what else might be going on. And then we ask permission to administer a SAGES verbal or math test. I'm going to walk you through 2 student samples as examples on the next slide. All right, so we're going to take a look at a student. Her name is Alice. And on this slide is the parent worksheet for 3rd and 4th grade for verbal, for ELA, for reading. Okay, and step 1, you will see all of the different metrics that we use during phase 1 to identify whether or not a student is in need of programming. Those metrics are the COGAT, which we talked briefly about, IXL reading, Achieve 3000 Lexile, on-demand writing. For our 4th grade students, the NJSLA writing, and teacher input through the gifted rating scale. So based on how students perform, we enter their scores in the column directly to the right. So you can see Alice scored a 128 on her COGAT, and according to the scale, a 128 earns her 2 points. Her IXL reading score was a 510, so that earned her 2 points. Her Achieve Lexile is an 850. That earned her half a point. Her on-demand writing score was a 4, and this is a rubric score from her homeroom teacher. That earned her half a point. And then we ask our staff for any student who's achieved a 125 or above on the COGAT, we ask them to fill in a gifted rating scale. What the gifted rating scale is, our teachers have that gut feeling about how students are performing because they're experts at their grade level. They've been on staff many years and they just have that intuition. So what the gifted rating scale does is it quantifies that gut feeling. And teachers fill in different ratings for creativity, leadership, academics, kind of that outside of the box thinking. They fill in this scale. It is norm referenced by a student's age down to the month. And there's an average score that we obtain from that. So you'll see here, Alice scored an average of 99 across those different areas on the gifted rating scale. And that earned her 1 point. So if you take a look at the totals, we've totaled all of Alice's score up, and she has demonstrated 6 quality points. If I go to step 2, did my child earn a grand total of 6 phase 1 points? The answer is yes. If yes is circled above, your child qualifies for ELA JET entry. You may stop. Okay, that's an example of a student who qualifies automatically. But as we talked about on earlier slides, there are some students that earn 3 to 5 quality points, but they're just not there yet. But we need to do a little bit more digging because maybe we've missed something on during phase 1. So let's take a look at a sample student here. His name is Steven. Steven is also in 3rd grade. And you can take a look at the different metrics used. Again, he scored a 132 on his COGAT, so that earned him 3 points. His IXL, he scored a 450. That earned him 1 point. But the other areas, he did not earn any quality points. His grand total on phase 1 is a 4. So let's go to step 2. Did my child earn a grand total of 6 phase 1 points? Well, we've circled no. If no is circled, move to question 2. Question 2 asks, did my child earn 3 to 5 total phase 1 points? And the answer is yes. Stephen earned 4. If yes is circled above, your child qualifies to move on to phase 2 evaluation. See the next page. So on the next page is phase 2. But let's talk a little bit about what happens after phase 1. Any student who qualifies for appeal or phase 2 receives an email correspondence from my office that lets you know how your child performed, how many points they've earned on phase 1, how many points they will need to earn during phase 2, and then I really strongly suggest a discussion with your child's teacher. This test then becomes kind of high stakes for that child, and you know your child best. Will they be able to handle not achieving the quality points during phase 2? Is it something that the teacher does not recommend? We can come back and look on phase 1, and Stephen did receive an average of 87, which is high. It's high, but remember that chart from earlier slides, high achieving versus gifted. So I encourage you to have that discussion with the teacher, and then you as a family make that decision whether or not your child will move on to phase 2. Stephen's parents decided yes. Stephen needed to achieve a 121 or above in order to earn 2 quality points that would give him a total of 6 that would indicate he is in need of JET programming. Stephen, his score was a 100. Stephen did not earn any quality points. He has a total score of 4, and at that point, the process stops. What's important to remember is that our SAGES scores are good for 1 calendar year. So as we're looking and evaluating students twice during a school year, we are referring back to a score that it remains valid from the SAGES, and those quality points are added into the rubric. After a calendar year has passed, students are then able to, if they qualify, take the SAGES assessment again. All right, I'm going to pause. That's a lot of information. Are there any questions, Mrs. Lakorchik, in the chat?
Right now, just one. Is there, and can we get another copy of our child's COGAT report?
Yes, you can. The main office has copies in the student file. You can request that from them. But I do want to let parents know that on a subsequent slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can access your child's COGAT and benchmark assessment scores through the Genesis Parent Portal. Anything else? No? All right.
Nope.
Sure. All right, here we go. All right, where can I view the benchmark and COGAT scores? Appropriate time for this slide to pop up, right? So this is a hyperlink that is going to take you directly to the Genesis Parent Portal. We post our benchmark assessment scores in the fall and in the spring. NJ, SLA, and COGAT are posted after the individual student reports are mailed home. So you can access all of your child's data here, okay? And there's a step-by-step how to access, locate it on the curriculum website if you're struggling with that. All right. All right, when do we evaluate our students? So our evaluation is ongoing. We've just finished up with our twice a year evaluation period. We review all students every year in grades 3 through 5 twice. It occurs towards the end of trimester 1 and trimester 2. And as I said, the SAGES scores are valid for 1 calendar year. Okay, so we just finished up our last screening for this school year. So at the end of trimester 1 next year, we will do our next screening. All right, with that, since we talked a little bit about how we identify students for pull-out programming, Mrs. Lakorchik is going to jump in again to talk about the students who are then identified at trimester 1, trimester 2, 3rd grade, what ELA JET looks like.
Okay, hello again, everybody. So for 3rd grade ELA JET, this begins in the 2nd trimester. So as I had mentioned earlier, that's when my 1st trimester, I'll do the whole class for 3rd grade, but now moving into the 2nd trimester, I'll be pulling those students out with me who are identified. So I get to see everyone during their WIN period. And for ELA JET, I'll see students 2 to 3 times in a 6-day cycle. And in ELA JET, we're doing things like passion projects and project-based learning. So with passion projects, students are looking at something they really, really love. We're doing some research on it. We're doing a lot of writing, and then we're doing some speaking and public speaking to present to others. And then, like I said, we're also going to be doing some project-based learning. I have upcoming something on climate change. And that is for ELA JET. And so then I would move to my next one, which would be ELA Math. And same thing for ELA Math. I pull the students out, and that would be during their WIN period. And that's 2 to 3 times in the 6-day cycle as well. And in math, I'll use some of the PETS lessons. At first, there's some small group lessons in there. There's a lot of games and interactions for students to be working together, where we're looking at challenging games and strategies that they have to use. And then we also focus on math practices and the different math strategies for students, which I had linked on that slide as well. If you wanted to take a look at that, I did put that link on once it's posted. And then just finally, to end for me, I do have a landing page. And again, once this is posted, you can click on that link. I did put some screenshots of what it looks like. But this landing page has activities for all students. It's all enrichment opportunities for students in grades K through 3. And honestly, even if you had some in 4th grade, 5th grade, they can go on this as well. Once you click on my landing page, I have different Bitmoji classrooms, which bring students to different websites that, again, have brain teasers or challenging activities, and they really just follow along and promote what I'm teaching in the classroom. There's also a section for monthly challenges, and monthly challenges are more project-based projects that you could be doing at home to also just further enrich your child.
I think that's a great point, Mrs. Lakorchik. For parents who are looking for summer activities to challenge students, your landing page is full of activities that parents can handle on their own for sure with their students.
Yes, and I introduce the landing page in every grade level, and I know that the teachers here at Dean Porter also use my landing page, and students go on that, so they are familiar with it and how to get to it as well.
Great. All right. Wow. I can't even believe that we're just through Dean Porter. It's such a robust program, hearing it out loud. There is a question that popped up I want to address. Our testing for this school year is complete, as I stated. It's finished. We sent our letters out several weeks ago. So the next JET identification will occur next year towards the end of trimester 1. Ms. Lakorchik, there is a question about how students are pulled. Do you pull them in small groups, as one group? without, we really can't go into the size of the group for confidentiality. They are a small group. What about bringing things home from the activities that they're doing with you? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so yes, when we're doing activities in the classroom, they do bring things home, but as something like the passion project, it really just depends on what was their actual project. If it was something that they built and they can, or a poster, something that they can bring home, yes. But other times there's students who are actually giving like oral presentations, so that wouldn't come home. But then on occasions too, I will videotape and send that home as well. So you will see things that they're working on in the classroom with me for ELA and also for math. And then I also have, for those students who are identified, I have an ELA JET Google Classroom where I post lessons that we're working on and also different activities or games that they can do at home. It's the same for ELA Math. It's a different Google Classroom that the students have access to, where you can see the lessons that I'm doing throughout the months that I'm doing them, and also just more activities that they can be working on at home.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to transition to Forestdale. We have with us Mrs. Maureen Gordon, who is our Forestdale gifted and talented teacher. So take it away, Mrs. Gordon.
Thank you, Mrs. Radu. Hi, good morning. My name is Maureen Gordon, and I am the 4th and 5th grade math and ELA JET teacher. I'm also the 6th through 8th grade enrichment teacher and the 7th and 8th grade future city STEM teacher. A little bit about myself. I've been teaching for 33 years. I've taught first grade and kindergarten for 14 years, and then the rest of my time has been gifted and talented. So to begin with, 4th and 5th grade JET is purely project-based learning. In the ELA JET classes, we focus on real-world problems that are interdisciplinary. They are aligned with the Common Core standards and the Next Generation Science standards. The students work many times cooperatively on open-ended, very student-centered problems or projects. When I pull the students, it is during their win period, which is great because the students are not missing out on core lessons in the regular classroom. And usually they are pulled either once or twice in a 6-day cycle for each subject, ELA or math or both. So the JET and enrichment classes are really assessed through rubrics that the students use as a guide to help them self-assess throughout the project timeline. It also provides the expectations of the project, which they have at the beginning and they can use as they work through their project. So in 4th grade ELA JET in the fall this year, we worked on a project based on biomimicry, where they had to apply the principles of biomimicry to solve a problem. So first we researched and we understood what biomimicry meant. Then the students defined a problem that they wanted to focus on. They continued to research, and then they decided upon an invention or a problem they could solve, and they designed a prototype that used biomimicry to solve that problem. And then once they were finished with that, we created a group presentation that they presented to each other and was sent home for the parents to review as well. This year in the spring, our 4th graders are trying to meet the objective to examine a topic and then convey information and ideas clearly. So we chose what's happening to our whales, very relevant topic happening right now, right locally. So the students, as we began to research, they started to see that there were different viewpoints and they started to learn about media bias. They began to develop questions, they researched. We were able to connect with marine biologists where they researched and asked questions and interviewed them virtually, which was amazing. They analyzed a lot of data about what's happening to whales around the world, and they've collected all of the information, and they are going to create a documentary on WeVideo where they are going to present all of their findings as to what the possible reasons are that could be affecting the whales in our world today. In 5th grade in the fall, the students used the engineering design process to build prototypes of systems to help humans survive on Mars. And through this project, the students are learning about all the different ways that we, even here on Earth, can create energy and create better food systems. And they're applying it to creating these prototypes to live on Mars. They identified research questions, they researched, and then they build models of their Mars colonies. Then they created a Mars Kahoot where they had to design questions, and they presented the Kahoot and their models to all the 3rd graders at Dean Porter, who are beginning just to start learn about Mars in their STEM classes. So it was kind of an introduction to their project by seeing older students share what they've learned about their colonies and their systems. So 4th and 5th grade Math Jet is based upon the Common Core standard mathematical practices. And they're listed here. I won't read through them, but we focus on them throughout the year through problem solving. We train as mathletes. They kind of get a kick out of that, but it's true. We compare it to how athletes train. And what they do is they train as mathletes to compete in the math Olympiads for elementary and middle school. They participate in 5 contests throughout the year. Each contest consists of 5 very difficult word problems, and they compete as a team internationally, and they compete against each other. And the top 10% internationally, the top 10% of teams receive an award at the end of the year. And then the top scorers in our grades, 4th and 5th, they compete kind of against each other, receive trophies and pins. What I love about this, sorry, Mrs. Rideau. What I love about this class is that the ability to reason, be logical, be resourceful, and occasionally ingenious is just apparent throughout the class time. They really develop an enthusiasm for problem solving, and there's a lot of math talk where they share their strategies with each other and teach each other, even me. I swear once a week I learn something new on how to solve a math problem. So it's really a great competition. So 5th grade Math Jet and ELA Jet students are invited to participate in the entrepreneurial program called TREPS. This program, the students develop a business, and they have to learn how to market their business and take care of their finances throughout the business. They develop leadership skills. They think creatively. There's critical thinking, and then they are given the opportunity to launch their business at the TREPS market, where they actually sell their products or services. So then in 6th through 8th grade, we offer enrichment to all students. At the beginning of the year, I present all the opportunities to all 6th through 8th graders, and then they have the opportunity to sign up for an enrichment class. These classes include TREPS, mock trial competition, public speaking, or a basic city design class called Metropolis. These classes take place during WIN or during lunch and recess, and it's purely for enrichment and gives all students the opportunity to participate. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. There aren't any questions in the chat. So with that, I'm going to go to the last slide. You've heard a lot about from Mrs. Laporchik, as our students are growing and developing over their elementary school years, our middle school students have a lot on their plate. They're provided opportunities for more academic challenge through enriched ELA courses and accelerated math pathways. You do not need to be identified as a JET student in order to qualify for enriched ELA and math, accelerated math. There are, however, updated rubrics that are hyperlinked here for you to view, where we take a look and we screen all of our students at the end of each year to determine their placement in the subsequent year. Mrs. Gibbons and I provided a presentation earlier in the school year, probably around January, to review the rubrics and placement. I've hyperlinked that presentation for you. It's also listed on our district website for you to view. It's a very robust process that provides, again, for an appeal process for students who qualify, because we are 100% dedicated to making sure that we are capturing all the students who require this type of programming. The middle school programming was built about 7 or 8 years ago. The rubrics were built and revised and refined in collaboration with the high school, understanding what students needed. We've made a commitment that every student in the middle school receives 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards, no matter what math pathway they travel on. Enriched ELA, we follow the same New Jersey standards in Enriched as we do in the grade level course. So there's nothing different in that regard, only the level of text, the Lexile level, the number of novels read, and the requirement for writing is pretty intense for Enriched ELA. Also on the slide, I've linked for you the Rumson mathematics course sequence that provides a graphic for you to view to see where students could end up at the end of 8th grade based on different pathways. I think it's also important for parents to know that in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, in 6th and 7th grade, at the end of the year, if a student is not in Enriched ELA or a student is not in an accelerated math course, there are pathways for them to enter into that level of acceleration or enrichment. And we provide summer math coursework because, again, we are dedicated to making sure that students do not have any gaps in their mathematics instruction once they leave us. So with that, thank you so much for sticking with us for 50 minutes to hear about the amazing things happening in gifted and talented programming. We have an open door policy. If you have any questions remaining, please feel free to reach out. Again, this recording is going to be on the district website, and we thank you again for participating.